I said Facebook again.
You did. The TikTok Facebook.
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 Bark, bark, bark. TikTok. Bark, bark.
Jesus.
Welcome to Your Safe Space, the podcast your partner, friends, parents, whoever thinks is dirty. Don't have time to read books? Want to understand the TikToks? We got you, fam. We're the Spice Traders, and we deal in spicy books. My name's Katie, and I need it to make sense.
Hi, I'm Des, and I would love to talk about feelings today.
I'm Liz, and I'm hypercritical. As always, we start every episode with 3 things. The first is a generic trigger warning. You can find specific triggers for this book in our show notes, so please check those out. Also, we do use foul language and talk a lot about sex. You have sensitivity to that, this isn't the podcast for you.
Secondly, we talk about books. The whole book, nothing but the book, so help me goddess. If you plan to read this book and you don't want something spoiled, don't listen to this episode right now.
Lastly, we acknowledge that a good book can hit you at the wrong time. The views expressed in our discussion are our opinions, and we absolutely do not want to diminish the work and the talent of the authors in our community. That said, we have some notes. So Liz, what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about The Never King by Nikki St. Crowe. This was published in 2022 and is the first in an ongoing series currently with 4 books at the time of this recording. When we dug into the author and these books, it seems like maybe the series is over, but inconclusive. This book is 193 pages in a physical copy, so that tracks as a shorty for us. What did you guys think about the cover for this one?
I didn't get it.
I didn't super get it either.
I don't hate it. I just didn't get it.
I get it after reading the book, but it definitely gives me like biker gang vibes.
Yes. So for frame of reference,
I don't love.
The cover is like a skull question mark?
Like a skull boy?
It's like a person with a skull mask on.
Yes.
Yes. Behind some like lace. Sort of, with red eyes and red eye sockets.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just quick tidbit on this book. It is a Peter Pan retelling, and I don't know about you guys, but none of that hit Peter Pan for me.
No. Not at all.
But when you finish the book, it does kind of make more sense, I guess.
I still don't, having read the book, get the cover. I might need someone to explain that to me.
Well, and the future covers follow in that same, like, trope or theme.
Then I'm definitely going to need to get someone to explain how it makes sense to me.
I mean, it kind of only makes sense to me because of the light and the dark, and the dark demon thing is kind of described as becoming a little bit more skeletal.
Because it's like death.
But that would mean that Peter's not on the front cover.
Right, which seems odd because why would he not be?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It is a nice cover. I like it.
Yeah, I like it. I just none of it read Peter Pan retelling to me.
No. So, let's get into it. Katie, take us on this journey to Neverland.
All right. It would be my pleasure. We don't get a map, and this is going to be one of those very few instances where you'll hear me say that it doesn't have a map and I didn't care.
Yeah.
Mostly because we talked about this in our short debrief, but this author does a really effective job of conveying a story in very few words. It's less than 200 pages, right? But then also not allowing you or leading you to get caught up in the details, right? The world is really just there as a backdrop for the story, and you're really there for the story. And man, was I here for the story.
So here for the story.
As we start the book, we don't get a prologue. We jump right in, and we are immediately introduced to Winnie Darling, and yes, that is her first and last name. So the title of the chapter is also the perspective, and it was called Winnie Darling. I thought for a hot minute that it was some kind of endearment, like Winnie Darling, but no, that's first and last name. Anyway, Winnie is getting laid in a car with a football player. We learned that she's about to turn 18, very close to it, so it's not weird. I still don't feel appropriate or like good about reading smutty books about teenagers.
Yeah.
So she's like basically of age, essentially. So she's having sex with this guy in the car, and she's kind of remarking to herself how bad he is at having sex. And we get this impression that she's not enjoying herself, but it's not like great sex. She's good at faking it because she's, in her words, the daughter of a prostitute. And so she's convincing this guy that he's given her a good time. She goes so far as to lie to him verbally and say that he was great, but she's internally disgusted by how eager he is.
Yeah, and she says this thing where she's like, I'm dead inside and so fucking bored, and the only thing I have to look forward to is being kidnapped by a myth. Happy fucking birthday to me.
So after they're done fucking, he drops her at home, and Winnie's mother is very anxious, thinking that Winnie has already been taken. This is when we learn that everyone in Winnie's family who is female is taken on their 18th birthday and is gone for varying levels of time. But when they return, they're always broken, most often mentally. Winnie interprets this whole thing as a load of hogwash. She just thinks that there's a strain of mental illness in her family that is coming for her and presents around the time that they come of age. Because I know that this is a Peter Pan retelling, we know exactly where they go.
Yeah. And the surname Darling, if you've watched or read Peter Pan. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in some buffering.
Take your time.
I think the really nice thing about the story is even though I knew exactly where it was going, I didn't. Like,
no, because it takes these twists.
Yes, it takes such a good twist. And so, like, even though I have, like, a good understanding of, like, the rough outline of where we're going, and, like, if you're listening, you absolutely already do, too. But the ways that we get there and the things that happen once we do are so wild, and you are not ready.
No.
I will say the whole time reading this, knowing it was Peter Pan, in this whole first chapter, I was like, was her name Winnie? Have I been calling her Wendy incorrectly for 32 years? I don't know if it's a different generation, but I was like, no one has corrected me on that. Her name's Wendy in the Disney movie. So, listen here.
Anyway, Winnie's mother is frantic and pushes Winnie into the room, which has fortified everything. It has runes painted on the floor, the walls, and the ceiling, carved into the casings, etc. And we learn that some of these are painted in blood, specifically Winnie's blood. When she says in her internal monologue about the parade of shamans and witches and mystics that helped them do this, she says, quote, "We don't have the money for it, but we spent it just the same."
Ouch.
Big ouch. So Winnie definitely has a very sardonic perspective about this whole thing. She doesn't take it seriously. She doesn't understand why her mother is paying all this money for these people to ward against something that she doesn't believe exists. She just thinks that her mother is very ill. She talks about how she and her mother have moved to 19 different houses because her mother thinks that she can outrun Peter Pan. She remarks that they travel light, and the only thing that she has of value is a trunk that is much smaller than it looks and very, very heavy. She inherited this trunk from her great-grandmother, Wendy Darling. So, no, Liz, you have not been using the wrong name for just 32 years. As Winnie eats dinner, her mother talks a little bit about what she can. So they talk about what her mother remembers. And this is really one of the only times that Winnie and her mother have ever spoken about this. Her mother's convinced that magic prevents her from speaking about specifics, but tells her eventually that Peter is losing his hold on some magic, and he thinks that the Darling women can somehow help him regain that control. Later that evening, Peter comes for her, and not in like the sexy way. I mean, it's kind of a sexy way, but so he enters the locked room, right? So there's like locks on this door and on the outside doors, and he just walks right through them. We get the following description of Peter. Quote, "Silver rings on his fingers reflect the flame of his cigarette," that is. "Dark tattoos cover his hands. There are several strips of string and leather tied around his wrists. He's tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a long coat with a stiff collar that stands up around his sharp jaw. Even though his body is hidden beneath the coat, I can tell he's corded with muscle by the mere suggestion of it in his biceps." End quote. The thing that I realized about this particular description is, and I'm not even sure like what what you would call this, but like I get a very visceral, like early 2000s, like Panic at the Disco, Fall Out Boy vibe.
Yeah.
Like I even pictured him as having like short painted black nails.
Yeah,
too.
I'm picturing
like that's
like,
not the description, but
I'm also picturing guy liner.
Yeah, guy liner for sure. So anyway, Peter's here. He greets Winnie's mother by calling her Meredith, and Meredith tries her best to keep Winnie away from him. Peter tells Winnie they can do this the easy way or the hard way, and Winnie tells him, obviously the easy way. And he tells her there is no easy way. Then we get a ye old perspective shift to Peter, and he magically takes Winnie to Neverland. She is unconscious for this journey. It's a tough journey for Peter because his magic is so depleted. It takes him twice as long as it would have been otherwise if his magic was not so depleted. We learned that whatever happened to Peter involved Tink and one of Winnie's ancestors.
He also mentions that the Nevertree's branches are growing thinner, but we don't get a lot of information about what the Nevertree actually is.
I think so. I think the Nevertree is the tree that's growing in their house.
I agree. Yes.
But it wasn't explicitly stated.
But I get the impression that it's like a tree with a house built around it.
Yeah. They even say that. Like they tore out the tree to build the house, and then the tree grew up again in the house.
Gotcha.
And like wouldn't stay dead, essentially.
Gotcha.
But so he takes Winnie to this house, and it's a tree house in a literal sense, because it's an old kind of colonial style house with a tree growing up in the middle of it. This house is full of lost boys, more than Peter can count these days, but the important ones are waiting for him upstairs. We meet Kaz, Bash, and Vane. And I gotta say, those names were not my favorite thing. They just were clunky for me.
The Kashba rock, the Kashba. Every time that they were in the same room, I was just like, rock the Kashba. Like, it's not.
Yeah. We learned that the magic depleting from Peter is also killing this island that they're on, and that Peter hopes that Winnie is the last darling that can save them because he can't hold on much longer. We get the impression that he's done this multiple times, as Winnie's mother has told her. So all of these predictions and all of these warnings that her mother Meredith had been telling her over the years are actually true. Peter deposits Winnie and tells Kaz to watch her, but not to fuck her. We learn that fucking a darling got them into this mess, so now they just break them. So when Winnie wakes up, she meets Kaz, and we get this description. Quote, he has the youth of a boy, but the presence of a man. Long black hair is tied into a bun at the base of his head. His gaze is knife-like, sharp and glinting as he takes in the sight of me. His skin is the color of the bright side of the moon, of a blood moon, and black tattoos run over his bare chest. All of the lines are precise and symmetrical on both sides of his body. They start at his neck and travel like a labyrinth over the rest of him, disappearing beneath the waistband of ripped black jeans. Point of clarification, all of these men hate wearing shirts, so most of the time they're shirtless. She also meets Kaz's twin, Bash, short for Sebastian. He gets the same description, quote, except this guy's dark hair is cut much shorter and fans over his head in waves. So, who doesn't love a twin?
Also, point of clarification, she does, when she wakes up, did you already say that she was chained to a bed?
I did not say that.
Because she is chained to a bed and she thinks to herself, that's kinky.
Very sex positive.
It's very cute, and I like that she's got that persona. Cute isn't even the right word. It's nice. It's good.
Refreshing.
Refreshing. Thank you.
Yeah. And as she's like waking up and recognizing that she's not alone and that she's chained to this bed, the twins like tell her, oh, we're the nice ones. And she can tell like in her internal monologue that they're trouble, but like in a sexy way. She's like not afraid at all. She's like, all right, well, this turned out to be true. So let's fucking go.
Right.
So we meet another lost boy as well, Vane, and he, quote, 3 long jagged scars cut his face in half diagonally from one temple to his jaw. One eye is bright violet, the other pure black.
Also, important of clarification, in the beginning of the book, we get a note from the author that explains that everyone over in the story is over 18. So when we say lost boys, they are boys, but they are men.
Right. Yeah, Lost Boys is really just harkening back to the old Peter Pan
Correct.
story.
I just wanted to make sure that nobody thought we were reading a story about an 18-year-old girl and a bunch of boys.
Yeah. This isn't a chateau situation.
Oh, yikes.
So I believe at this point, they've taken her into kind of a kitchen area to like get her some food and have her stretch her legs or something, because it's at this point, as she's meeting Vane, that Vane uses some kind of magic on her to make her feel terror. Oh, no, sorry. They are in her room still. Vane's just kind of a dick. So Vane's there and then uses some kind of magic on her to make her feel terror. Then is done with that and tells the twins to bring her out to the main area because he's losing patience. Okay, so another thing I like about this book is we've had two perspectives so far, Peter and Winnie. We also get other perspectives, and so we shift to another one now for Bash. From Bash's perspective, we see this trio go into the kitchen and give Winnie food. Openly, Bash admits that he's lulling her into a false sense of security. So when I say openly, I mean to us, the readers, in his internal monologue. He and his brother pretend to be the nice ones so that they feel safe and they feel like they have somebody that they can relate to. But in reality, they kind of have this dark undertone of they just really need something from her. He goes on to add that Kaz will pretend that he's not awful, but he's not fooling anybody and he knows the true him. At the end of this kind of revelation to the readers, he admits that Meredith, Winnie's mother, got a raw deal. Doesn't elaborate on that further.
We know that Mary got a raw deal, and we just don't know how at this point. But I do like that we get a little bit of information about her mom and like, because the thing is, when we meet Winnie, they're like, you know, she talks about how they constantly move quick and they travel light and like they know that there's this thing that's coming, and it's like I cannot imagine that her mother Meredith is the first one to ever try running, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious as to, like, at this point in the book, I was like, okay, well, I wonder if the reason she's running is because either A, you know that this thing is going to happen anyway, because it's happened to every single other person, or B, you are delusional into thinking that it's not going to happen, which I think is what is happening with her mother. But I'm curious as to the why and, like, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And we do get a satisfying answer to that. So come along with us on this journey. Bash also gives us a little bit more information about the house. As I mentioned, it is a colonial house, but it was built by pirates, and it has this magical tree growing in the middle that we intuit is the Never tree, although it's not explicitly said, this is the Never tree in the middle of the house. This is the tree that's slowly dying because it's somehow connected to the island, which is connected to Peter Pan, who is losing his power and therefore his grip on Neverland, this island that they are on. Bash makes Winnie pancakes, and when she eats them, Bash, Kaz, and Vane are all in the room, and it's just incredibly entranced by this. Because there's, like, syrup that she, like, licks off of her fingers and up the corner of her mouth, and, like, they're just all, like, drooling. Bash remarks that most darlings show up are scared and timid, but Winnie looks like she's never been more alive. The moment of the four of them having this awesome sexual attention is shattered when another woman named Cherry walks in. This person has a huge crush on Vane, who can't stand her despite regularly fucking her.
I don't even know what to say about that. Like, the Vane Cherry thing, like...
I mean, like, so Vane is, like, the bad boy trope, right? Like, in a reverse harem, they're all, like, bad boys, but he's, like, legitimately kind of a terrible person.
Yeah.
So Cherry comes in and breaks the spell or whatever and starts chatting up with Winnie. Winnie ends up sharing her pancakes, and the twins leave to speak privately. Cherry doesn't reveal much to Winnie, only that she came to the Lost Boys' house of her own free will and to Neverland of her own free will. Bash tells Winnie that Peter Pan wants to see her when he wakes up, which will be soon. Peter Pan wakes up in what is referred to as a tomb. It's a bedroom that has no windows and only one door. He gripes internally about how the sun can kill him and that the pirates are hunting him, and his magic is waning. So he kind of has to be locked in this bedroom when he's his most vulnerable so he doesn't get hurt. Vane is the only one that has a key to his room at all. As Peter remarks that Vane is the only one that has a key to the room, he's kind of resentful because he says that Vane has his power and his shadow. We're not sure what a shadow is yet. But I have my note here. The shadow is what I'm beginning to think he lost. And if you watch the movie, that's spot on. So when Vane unlocks the door and sees Peter Pan, he remarks that Peter doesn't look so good. Pan asks about Winnie, and Vane remarks that she's prettier than the last one. He also says Cherry told her too much. They both think that Cherry is a liability, but Pan remarks that they need her to be loyal, and so tells Vane to fuck her so that she stays that way. Vane tells Pan to let him kill her, but Pan tells him no. So pretty harsh words from Vane, but we'll find out more about why those words are coming from him later.
Yeah.
So in Peter's internal monologue, we learned that the Lost Boys joke that Peter Pan ran away from his mother the moment he was born, but he reveals that he actually doesn't have any memory before waking up on the island of Neverland. And that was many, many, many years ago and many darlings ago.
I wish we would know more about that. I'm very curious.
I'm interested to see how much more information or how much more fleshing out we get of these backstories in the subsequent books.
Yeah, same.
So Pan and Vane join the twins and Winnie in the lounge. This is kind of like an upstairs area away from the rest of the Lost Boys. Peter drinks rum and smokes a cigarette and tries to keep convincing himself that he's alive, like feeling the burn of the cigarette, the burn of the alcohol. He's like, I am alive, right? I'm alive. I can feel these things. He notices as he looks across the room how thin Winnie is, how too thin she is, and asks himself what the fuck Mary did to her. So Mary is the nickname that they have for Meredith, Winnie's mother. So this is the first inclination that I get that they're not actually intentionally breaking them. That's just kind of the story that they're telling themselves.
Yeah.
But also, like, he thinks this of Mary and realizes that he's feeling anger and protectiveness over Winnie, and that unsettles him. So it strikes me that they have not felt this way about the other darlings that they've kidnapped. Going back to the reverse harem thing, it's just like, I must protect her. I must do anything for her.
Yeah, I mean, the one major difference to their point that they made earlier is, like, most of them come in afraid and, like, screaming and upset, whereas, like, Winnie has kind of come in and is making jokes and is kind of settling in, like, immediately she feels like this is home and, like, she's making herself at home there. And so that, I think, is right. I think that's the, like, major difference.
Yeah, having a great time.
Yeah.
So Pan and Zane lead Winnie out of the house and down to the shoreline where the beach is. Pan watches the seagulls fly and misses being able to do so himself. So because he's losing his magic, he can't do a lot of things. Flying is one of them. Peter shares that his kingdom is the southern part of this island of Neverland, and Hook's territory is on the north end. Tilly's is a pie wedge in between. So these are all classic characters from the movie. So Tiger Lily is now Tilly, Hook, Captain Hook. Hook is the leader of the pirates, and Tilly is the leader of fairies, but in this realm it's fae, right?
Yes. I thought Tiger Lily was the daughter of, like, the really racist Indian on the island.
Yeah, but I don't think Nikki wanted to write about racist Indians.
Oh, no. I thought you were comparing, like, the fairies, but, like, in the original. Where Tiger Lily was a fairy. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm so glad she didn't target the race, because those scenes are bad.
Yeah.
Upsetting.
Yeah. I also like that her name is Tilly, like, not...
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But I like that nod to Tiger Lily. I actually didn't catch that till you just said it, so I'm a big fan. Listen here.
So while they're on the beach, Peter Pan tells Winnie to look around, that this place doesn't exist in her world, and she can swim for as far as she possibly can without making it home.
Damn.
Winnie licks her lips in response to this, and Vane goes rigid, like, not just in his pants. But also in his pants. I just love how already all of these men are falling at her feet, just like cannot handle it.
Yes.
The proximity or the reactions.
No, it's delightful.
She asks them how long it will be before she can go home, and he asks if that's what she wants. She says her mother needs her. Vane loses it, and his shadows start taking over, which is how he frightened Winnie earlier. So his shadow power, his shadow magic, makes people feel fear. His hair goes completely white, and his teeth turn into fangs. His eyes and veins go black. And Pan is, like, admonishing him, like, please don't do that. But Winnie immediately turns and runs.
Because he's scary.
Yeah. His magic is making her feel terror.
Right. For a hot second, I was like, ew, are they vampires? Because, like, I fucking love vampires, but, like, don't give me Peter Pan and vampires.
No.
But it comes back around.
Yeah.
What book was it where the guy was, like, a werewolf and a prince and also, like, something else?
Rise of a Dark Throne.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was so many things. And I was like, don't do this to me, Nikki.
He was an elf and a werewolf because it mattered.
Neither mattered either. Like, we don't use any of that.
No, not at all.
Bullshit.
So Winnie runs away. Peter tells Fane to cool off and that he'll bring Winnie back. He easily catches up with Winnie and explains that it was Fane's power that made her feel afraid and run. He tells her to come back and she demands to know when she can leave. He tells her she can leave as soon as he knows whether she can help him. Tells her that she will only break as much as she decides to. Sounds like a dangerous thing.
I know,
kind
right?
of. And at this point I have this like line, this is kind of becoming reminiscent of Flock, and I really hope we don't go down that road. We don't,
my gosh.
listeners, we don't.
Okay, good. The one of us who was scarred by Flock. I'm so glad
God.
it was not me.
No. So Pan throws Winnie over his shoulder and takes her bodily back to the treehouse. Once back, he tells her that long ago someone in her family stole something from him and he wants it back. And so he's going to root around in her head and find it if he needs to. The twins escort her back to bed and chain her to it again. While she's laying there, Winnie remembers a neighbor friend of hers and her mother's. This woman was a prostitute that knew how to get what she wanted, and Winnie wanted to learn everything that she could from her. The woman, Starla, had told her once, quote, "Baby girl, I don't do boyfriends. My men are toys and I play with them regularly." End
Fuck,
quote.
I thought that was Cherry. My bad.
Yeah, Starla was fucking rad. When Winnie's mother couldn't pay rent on that house that they lived next to her in, they lost the rental and she never saw Starla again. But she thinks about Starla in this moment and what she would do in Winnie's situation. Winnie remarks that it was because of Starla that she got around in high school, using the boys around her for things that she needed. Rides, money, meals, help with anything. And that's kind of what we saw her doing in the beginning of the book, fucking a guy in his car.
So Starla also has this great quote where she says, "Most men don't realize this, but we girls, we have toolboxes too. Ours aren't stuffed with hammers and wrenches and screwdrivers. We have these." She gave her boobs a squeeze. "And this," she tapped her temple. "There's no greater power than tits and brains, baby girl."
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I did love that. Although when she first used the word toolbox, I was like, don't call your vagina a toolbox. But she didn't. But I was like, but it kind of is. She didn't point to that one, but
Nope.
it's there. Tits and brains, baby girl.
So Winnie's thinking about this, and she realizes that Kaz could be the weak link in the army of lost boys that hold her captive. So she calls for him. Kaz finds her crying, putting on a show of being afraid. He comforts her, but as she gets close, he tries to leave. She begs him to stay, and he does, saying, "Please don't leave me, I just don't want to be alone." They both lie back on her bed, and he uses his magic to show her the stars through the ceiling of the room, using, like, kind of spinning a Hogwarts-style enchantment.
Ugh. I wish I had that power. I would love to,
I know.
conjure shit on my ceiling at night.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
With my though, I just conjure, construction sites or, TikTok reels,
Construction sites.
Just like jackhammer.
Right, this is not relaxing.
Are you relaxed?
Is this doing it for you?
So as they lie there and talk, Kaz reveals that he doesn't know what they're fighting for anymore. He forgets that Pan is a king, but king of what? He thinks, quote, he doesn't give a fuck about the hibiscus or the lilies or the cloudberry bushes. A king cannot become something else. He will always be a king. Without the throne, he is nothing, end quote.
Damn.
Which I thought was just a really beautiful way to portray, the differences in motivations and perspectives, even amongst the menses.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're all kind of fighting for the same thing, but not really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Winnie asks Kaz what he and his brother are, and he tells her that they are fairies or fae. She goes to say that she doesn't believe in such things, but he stops her, saying that if she says that, he will be dead. She promises never to say it. So that whole, if you guys remember the early 2000s Peter Pan, I do believe in fairies.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, that's at play here.
Which, like, wow, what a quick way to kill a fairy.
Uh-huh, yep.
And is it just like, I had questions about that, because is it like the fairy in front of you, or like if I say it now, is just some rando fairy gonna drop dead?
He makes it seem in this moment that it's just like a fairy somewhere will die, but later I think it's the fairy in front of you.
Yeah, like it's like a targeted, like, I don't believe in you.
Right, I don't believe in you.
It's like, holy shit, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels very overpowered. And, like, they're trying to exert power over her at one point. I don't think it's now, because I think she's still chained to the bed again. And it's like, she could just get out of that situation if she wanted to, and she just doesn't.
She doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yep.
I also don't want her to.
I also don't want her to.
More.
So, fairies, but in Neverland they are called fae. The fae of Neverland have one rule: don't kill other fae. But Bash and Kaz broke that rule. We don't know who they killed yet. Winnie asks about Kaz's tattoos, running her finger along them and making him shiver. He tells her that they are a memory, but we learn in his internal monologue that they once denoted his rank in fae society. As Winnie's hand drifts lower, Kaz warns her that he knows exactly what she's doing and it's not going to work. He leaves her, but is so riled up that he goes to the bonfire where the other Lost Boys are hanging out with girls from the village, and he picks a girl at random and makes her suck him off. The whole time he's thinking about Winnie.
That was hotter than I had anticipated it being.
It was hotter than it had any right to be.
Yep. Usually I hate that kind of, like, debasement.
Yeah.
But the author again, this is a really good example of how the author just uses, like, the fewest amount of words to convey what's happening in the scene. And I did not get the impression that this girl was unwilling.
No.
Correct. No. And, like...
Which, like...
I also think the fact that, like, they didn't, like, leave the bonfire. He wasn't like, come over here. Like, he was like, no, right here in front of all these people, we're doing this right now. And I was like...
Right. And she was like, okay.
Right.
She just, like, drops to her knees.
Yeah. So he's thinking about Winnie, and Winnie is watching from her window. And just like, wow, that's so fucking hot. Why is that so fucking hot?
She's also really turned on by it.
Yeah. She has a similar reaction that we did.
She's like, oh, look what I did to him.
Right. But very soon, Bash comes in and demands to know what she did to Kaz to upset him. And in this moment, Winnie's like, oh, I chose the wrong twin. Bash grabs Winnie by the throat and pushes her against the wall. He says that darlings are all the same, all acting like victims. She clarifies, we are victims. You kidnapped me. And he lets slip that Pan is dying, but he quickly realizes what he said when Winnie asks him to clarify. That's when he releases her throat, but doesn't take his hand physically off her. So he's no longer choking her, but his hand is, like, resting on her. As he does this, Winnie has this exchange in her internal monologue. Quote, Starla, I think, I'll make you proud. You fuck the one that's good and ready, she'd say. End quote. Just like, there's so many good lines here.
I know.
There's so many good lines. I'm going to have the opposite problem as I do with Rise of a Dark Throne, where there's going to be so many quotes.
I know.
Multiple social media posts a day.
Seriously, it's just going to be like, I'm just going to give you the book in snippets. So buckle in.
Yep. So Bash swings Winnie around to the bed. He sits down with her on top of him and tells her to bounce. So they be fucking. Winnie is ecstatic, having a great time.
So he yanks the collar of her dress, pulls it down, and pulls her breast out and, like, captures her nipple in his mouth. And then, like, bites at her, and which makes her yell and, like, jolt and, like, move more quickly. Yeah.
And that's when Pan is in the room suddenly. Peter's here.
Yep.
Peter's here.
And he basically goes, don't stop on my account. And this just turns Winnie on even more.
Oh my God.
Bash tries to stop. Like,
Yeah, Bash is like, oh shit.
I'll stop. And no, Peter's like, no, keep going. And
Yeah.
they do. And like, oh my
And
God.
they do.
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised that Bash could, like, keep his
Keep it
Woody,
up.
because that sounds terrible. Like, you've been warned by your king not to fuck this girl, and now he's here, he's caught you, and he's just like, do it, bitch. I'd be like, no, I'm out. I can't.
I wasn't doing anything. We're not connected. Look, I'm soft.
Look, I'm soft. Like, I don't care how turned on I am. If I was in that situation, I'd be like,
yeah. So they do continue, and Bash finishes, but just before Winnie does, Pan pulls her off and banishes Bash from the room. He tosses Winnie in a chair and warns her that she has no idea what she's getting into, and she retorts she's kidnapped. She's fully aware of her situation. Then she taunts him by lifting her skirt back up and fingering herself and enjoying the fuck out of goading him.
Point of clarification. The only thing she is wearing this whole time is a large oversized t-shirt. She was asleep when she was kidnapped, and that's all she's got.
Yes.
Yes.
Good clarification. So in this scene, Winnie says, quote, "I'm like a kid let loose at a county fair, and I want to ride all the rides and play all the games."
Oh my God.
Girl, same.
Girl, same.
As she plays with herself, Peter fingers her and then instructs her to clean his fingers off. He calls her a filthy little darling whore and sends her over the edge. He warns her that they don't fuck darlings and she'll regret fucking around.
Will she, though, Peter?
And he also
I
says,
don't think she will.
Like, at one point he's like, don't stop, darling. Like, oh, the communication. Definitely one-handed Readers Club on this one.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's where, like, I really liked the last name being Darling, because it is also
Yes.
this, like, pet name, and I'm like, oh!
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's also a power play because it's their last name. I was just really into it.
It's so good.
I was into every moment of this whole book.
Same.
So after this encounter, Pan is brooding on the balcony where Vane finds him. Vane took out all of his pent-up frustration and energy on Cherry, who barely survived it, according to Vane.
Holy shit!
Yeah. Pan remarks that Vane comes from a different island in his internal monologue, a darker one. Vane has his own battles and is dealing with them every day. Pan tells Vane about Bash and Winnie, and Vane asks about Pan, saying, you know, did you fuck her too? What happened there? And goes on to say, I can smell her on you. Pan insists that he doesn't have a problem and he can quit anytime.
I can quit anytime I want.
I don't have a problem, man.
I don't have any problems here. Shut up. Don't look at me, I'm ugly.
So the next day, Winnie wakes up and remarks that the island location without the kidnappers would be fantastic. She is happy. She feels like she's on vacation because it's this island scene. She's got a room all to herself. Very peaceful, you know, hot boys to fuck. Like,
And cooking
who
breakfast
wouldn't?
and, like, meals for you, because apparently Cass or Bash is, like, a wonderful cook.
Of course, there's always a cook
Yes.
in these things.
Well, someone has to feed them.
Yeah. Winnie thinks about the night before, about Bash and Pan, and about how much she enjoyed it, and she hopes that it's not a one-time thing. Cherry interrupts her reverie, and Cherry looks like she got the kick shitted out of her. The shit kicked out of her.
Love when I get the kick shitted out of me.
And Winnie remarks as much. But Cherry kind of demurs and said, you know, something to the effect of, I fell down the stairs. But
Yeah,
as
okay.
they talk, Winnie decides that she likes Cherry and knows that she can give her attention and get the same reaction that she gets out of the Lost Boys. So she identifies immediately what Cherry needs and craves, and she's like, yeah, I can give it to you. And this is one of those things that makes me love Winnie. She's shrewd and she's smart and she gives zero fucks. She's in it for Winnie, and girl, love that.
I love that energy. I just want to be Winnie. I want to embody that.
Especially if I get to live in Neverland with the four
With the
Lost
Lost Boys. Yes, please.
So as they talk, Cherry tells Winnie that there are 7 islands and each has 2 shadows. The king of each island chooses one for himself, and Pan chose life long ago. The other shadow is death. The life shadow is the one that Pan lost. Winnie immediately understands that this is what Pan thinks her family stole from her, which I love because it's not this long drawn out, like, what could it be? What are we looking for?
be? No.
Yeah,
Which was so unnecessary.
right.
Or would have been so unnecessary.
Cherry goes on to reveal that Bash and Kaz killed their father.
Casually.
Casually. Just like, oh yeah, patricide. We also learned that Cherry is human and comes from Hook's lands. So Hook, Captain Hook, he hates Peter Pan, obviously.
Obviously.
Cherry, but
Obviously. I had to do it. I had to do the Snape voice.
But we don't actually meet Hook in this book. But interestingly, in this conversation, Cherry lets slip that she knows Hook personally somehow.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like I had this thought that she might be his daughter.
I also had that thought.
Ooh, I like that thought.
Yeah.
Which might be another reason why Captain Hook fucking hates the Lost Boys and Peter Pan, because they are fucking his daughter.
And also, like, beating the shit out of her. Wow.
Yeah.
Fucking.
Right.
Kind of a problem. Cherry goes to leave, but reveals that Vane has a shadow from a different island, but that his shadow is death. So when we were talking earlier about how Vane has his own struggles and he's dealing with his own stuff and he has reasons for the way that he acts the way he does, it's because he's constantly battling with his shadow. That's why he looks the way that he does as well. It's not like a happy symbiotic relationship. He's in a constant struggle with this power that lives within him. Moving into an idyllic scene between Bash and Kaz, they are reclining on hammocks between two palm trees on the beach. And they're talking.
Just chilling.
Bash tells Kaz what he did with Winnie, and Kaz is like, I don't actually remember his reaction, but it's kind of like, man, you are so dead.
Yeah, like, you're gonna get fucked.
Yeah.
Not in a fun way. Because I think
No.
he says that, like, Pan caught him, and he's like, you're screwed, man.
You're so screwed, yeah. But as they sit there and talk, they're quickly interrupted by Cherry, who has come to ask them if Winnie can attend the bonfire later that night. She tells them to stop speaking Fae, so they're like talking to each other and then also talking to Cherry. And so we learn that Fae language is something that not everybody can understand, and it sounds like bells chiming. So Cherry kind of admonishes them for talking between themselves so she can hear the bells. And they try to rile her up further and, like, you know, taunt her and say, like, what's wrong, Cherry, blah, blah. But she tells them to cut it out, that if they can get Winnie to the party, she'll sort it out with Peter Pan. Bash agrees to cook. And that's the plan for the evening. So when Cherry leaves, Bash and Kaz go on to talk about Tilly, their sister. They wonder amongst themselves whether Tilly will ever forgive them for killing their father, the king. They go on to discuss that they suspect that Tilly is doing something to mess with the Darlings. So we don't know how yet, but Tilly is somehow complicit in whatever it is that happens to the Darling family while they're there. But Bash and Kaz have come to suspect that their sister isn't on the up and up.
What I love about this book is, I was thinking back to, like, the first shorty that we read and how much I hated it, and it felt just rushed and not well put together, and I was like, ugh. Like, in looking for books that give me the, like, good feelings of, like, what an interesting story of ACOTAR, like, I didn't think a short book could do that, and, like, this book doesn't quite hit ACOTAR levels of, like, complexity of a story, but, like, we are building to such an interesting twist and storyline that I would have never predicted in such a short book that also has, like, a good fair amount of smut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could have more smut, but anyway.
It could have more smut.
You can't...
We'll get to it.
Yeah.
There could almost always be more smut, in my opinion.
Yeah. So after this conversation, we get a scene from a brownie's perspective. A brownie is a creature of Tilly's court and tells the queen that Peter Pan has Winnie, the new darling. He urges Tilly that if she wants the island, now is the time to take it, as Peter Pan is weak, and this is the last darling that he will ever take. They speak of Tink, how Pan loved her once but then killed her, and they imply in this conversation that Tink is Tilly's mother, so was queen before Tilly. Tilly tells the brownie to leave her brothers out of this. She doesn't care what they do, but the brownie knows better, knows that she cares. Tilly instructs the brownie to find out where Hook stands, and she doesn't want to fight him too. So basically, if we're going to do this thing, I just don't want to fight a two-fronted war, like find out where his side is.
Smart.
Yeah. Back to Winnie. We finally understand what she looks like. She has, quote, pale skin, big green eyes, and dark hair, end quote.
Wow.
Wow. Look at this girl. Wow.
Wow.
What a
I
human.
am Female.
Female.
Famale. Kaz comes to release Winnie, tells her to stay close to not try to run away. And she says, don't worry about it. I already know there's nowhere to go. Like, I'm good.
Right. I'm not going to run.
Right. Don't worry about it. But Kaz goes on to apologize for what his brother Bash did. And she says, oh, don't worry. It was my pleasure.
I fucking love that. Also, kind of twisting that knife is like, it could have been you, bro. You left.
Right. It could have been you.
You had the first choice.
So in this scene, she's like, I think he brings her additional clothes because to the point that Des made earlier, she was kidnapped in a big shirt, and that's basically what she's been in. And as she's changing, she's clear to hide her scars from him, remarking inwardly that that's the least of what she's suffered, whatever Bash did to her. The scars on her skin are way worse. And we find out later it's not ruining anything, but these scars are from all of the like shamans and magic people and soothsayers that her mother had to come ruin the room that didn't end up protecting her. So her back is all kind of scarred and she's got little bitty cuts everywhere.
Just horrifying.
Winnie goes to the kitchen and joins Bash, who is cooking. She dips her finger in the batter that he's crafting and sensually licks it off. He does the same to his finger and just like, oh, you have to clean mine now too. And so she does.
He leans right into it. He's like, oh, we're doing this again. Okay.
Right. And then Vane comes in and then just takes a handful of batter and smears it on her lips. And she's just like, yeah, that's great. Because she knows that Vane's trying to like rile her. And she's like, I'm all set, bud.
I'm all set.
I'm good. Yep. But then, as a reaction, Vane tries to terrorize and also edge Winnie by bending her over the counter, leaving her cold and indifferent a moment later, like, giving her that attention and then leaving her and acting like nothing left. But Winnie just taunts him, just like, oh, wow, that was what a ride, or something to that effect. And
takes it in stride.
Yeah, she takes it in stride. And Vane is incredibly irritated. She's just like, I don't understand. Does not compute. Bash laughs, telling Winnie that Vane never walks away from anything. It's a first. And she remarks it's her first kidnapping too, so they're all having firsts today.
I adored that.
So later that night at the bonfire, or before the bonfire, Winnie tries fairy wine with Cherry and Kaz, and it's one of the best things that she's ever tried, and it immediately gets her tipsy. She goes on to enjoy the night and ends up playing cards with Cherry and a couple of other lost boys. The lost boy beside her has his hand on her thigh and starts getting fresh, and she is into it. So at some point, she crawls into his lap, and they start canoodling a little bit. We flip immediately to Pan, and Zane is banging on his door, telling him that Winnie is partying with the Lost Boys. Pan loses his shit, despite the fact that he's not supposed to. Like, remember, they're not supposed to give a flying fuck about the darlings, except to get back what Pan lost. But he's mad that she's fooling around with other boys.
Big mad.
Yep. Zane keeps trying to tell him to calm down, but Pan goes to the party, pulls Winnie off the Lost Boy, and then sticks his hand in the Lost Boy's chest and rips his heart out, killing him instantly.
That was like,
yeah,
that was an extreme reaction.
Yeah.
Also,
not a big fan.
Listen here, Zane. You can't pound on his door, wake him up, be like, she's fucking around out there, and be like, well, calm down, bro. Like,
I know. It's like, who was the one that was having no chill?
Right. Like, this is you. I was asleep. I was having a great time in bed.
You didn't have to tell me that? Right.
No.
So, dead boy aside, Peter pulls Winnie back into the house and pushes her up against the table and is basically like, so you want to fuck the Lost Boys, why not start at the top? And fucks her over the table.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm. Oh. And she's having a great time.
She's
definitely
into
climaxes
all of this.
And she realizes that the twins and Vane are watching, and she likes that even better.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Peter's done, the twins come up, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with the technical term of spit roasting, but that's what happens.
That's what happens.
I am.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you're not, it's a cock in the mouth
and a crack in the back.
Mush mouth.
And
There's
a crack in the back.
Wait, let her finish.
Sorry.
You're good. No, it's a cock in the mouth and a cock in the vag. Cock in the
Cock in the
back
back.
is better, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it
it's
could be in
vag.
your butt, I guess. There's a quote because they're twins and they're spit roasting her, and it's something like, in some bizarre twin synchronicity, they come at the same time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're going to do twins, they have to.
Oh, and in some kind of fucked up twin synchronicity, they both come at the same time.
Yep.
Oh, and if you want to act like a whore, he says as he leans over me, then I'll treat you like a whore.
Okay.
Okay, Daddy.
So then after the twins are done, Vane comes up, but all he does is spit in her mouth. Winnie loves every second, except for the Vane part. The Vane part... Don't love the Vane
I don't
part,
love the Vane part.
And that makes her lose her shit. She, I think, smacks him across the face, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
I think so too.
Yeah. So that night, the twins are ordered to stay with her. As she showers, the twins talk about how glad they are that Pan finally broke down and they got to have fun with the darling. They enchant her bedroom to be covered in moss and magical flowers with a starry night sky, and as Winnie comes out of the bath, they all climb in bed together. Bash tells Kaz that he's spoiling her, and Kaz replies that he knows, but he wants her to see that they can be soft before she realizes that they are not. Pan and Vane go out to Darlington, the town in their territory, looking for pirates to kill.
Darlington. I want to know also, why is it named that?
Why would it be named that?
I also want
Why would it be named that if these are just humanoids?
I feel like we'll eventually get that, and so I'm not even willing to speculate because it's like so like it's very clearly a hint, but I have no breadcrumbs to lead me to.
Right.
So
I mean,
curious.
the only breadcrumb I have is that Darlington, they have to be connected.
They have to be connected.
Right.
Right.
Okay. So they go to Darlington, which is the human town, and they're looking for pirates to kill. They go into a bar and they find two, and a deadly brawl ensues. They just beat the shit out of these guys. This is their form of blowing off steam, by the way.
I mean, at least they're not ripping hearts out.
Yeah, I guess. Well, they're not doing that.
I mean, that's true. That's true. Okay,
right,
okay,
like-
okay.
So back at the ranch, aka the treehouse, Winnie is falling asleep between the twins and feels content and safe. We learn that she's never shared a bed with anybody, and she really likes it. Before she falls asleep, one of the twins asks what her favorite food is, and she answers croissants. And in the morning, when she goes into the kitchen, she finds that Bash has made croissants for her. Kaz comes in after fishing, and we get a scene where they teach her how to skin and clean fish for some reason.
Why?
Yeah,
it's
I
fine,
didn't love
whatever.
that.
It's whatever. But I was like, why?
I think it's
Why are we
because
doing this?
we learn a couple of things about Kaz and Bash. So specifically, we learn that Kaz is an expert with a knife, and Bash has a scar that Kaz gave him, like on purpose, and it's in the shape of the crest of their house. This is when they tell Winnie that they are actually Fey princes of Neverland. They go on to say that the reason that they're banished is because they killed their father, but they lie about the reason and said they did it because they could.
Which leads to this line where she says, she's asking them, like, do you all just go around murdering on the regular? And Bash responds with, yeah, we murder a lot. And she wants to know why. And he responds with, because in this world and in yours, if you're not the monster, then you're the prey. And we can't have that, darling, especially when it comes to old white men.
The old white men of it all. I was like, yes.
I know.
Oh, I loved that.
The only thing about the fish is that we learn that the fish are payment for their sister, because their sister is going to show up tonight and perform some kind of service. They don't tell her at that time what the service is. In this internal monologue from, I think it's Kaz, he talks about how he mourns the loss of being able to be his sister's protector when everything they've ever done was for their sister. But they don't have that relationship anymore. Later that day, Winnie goes exploring and finds the library and Vane inside reading. She taunts him, and he taunts her right back, like just trying to goad each other further and further into giving the other some kind of positive attention. She ends up straddling him on the couch, and the internal monologue here that like gets her there is like she taunts him first, and he just taunts her right back, and she's like, well, fuck, I can't leave now because he'll think he won. So I guess I'm doing this.
Just gonna double down.
Yep.
Straddle this terrifying man.
Yep. She takes her shirt off and he fondles her chest. He starts to lose it and his shadow starts to come out, and he takes her from the couch to the floor. She's terrified and excited all at once, and he tells her that he will not turn her into his broken fuck doll and leaves the room. Okay, but maybe you could.
I mean, but like, I'm not saying no to that.
Can we get a little bit more details about what that entails?
Right, like how permanently broken is broken? Because Cherry seems fine.
Cherry seems like she's having a great time.
Well, because, like, he leaves and she's, like, has this thought in her head. She's like, I lie there on the rug for several long minutes, not entirely sure what just happened and if I actually survived it. Am I dead?
Am I dead? Well, also in the sense that, like, Winnie is not a woman who is used to being turned down by any man. So it's like, Vane, can we, like... I gotta fix this puzzle here. I gotta solve this.
I know. Yeah. What is it about me?
Right.
Or is it a you thing?
Or is it a
If it's
you thing? Can we fix it? I'm gonna break that before you break me.
So later that day, Pan finds her and takes her to a lagoon. He tells her that Tink used to say that the lagoon was once a portal to the underworld. They see shapes swimming around and swirling in its depths, and this is kind of a proxy for the mermaid lagoon in the movie. On the way there, though, he asks about Winnie's scars. Like, hey, what happened? Where'd you get those? And she's taken aback. She's like, how did you even know? That kind of thing. But eventually tells him that her mother, Meredith, gave them to her because of Peter Pan. Pan tells her that he took her mother here as well to try to calm her mother down. In his internal monologue, he remarks that Meredith was crying, but is cryptic about why. So we have these kind of crumbs about Meredith got a raw deal. She was crying, but in a different way than maybe her mother before her, but we're not getting a whole lot of information as to why. Peter reflects that he doesn't want to see Winnie broken like Meredith or any of the others. And this is new for him. Usually he doesn't give a shit. When they get back, it's time for Tilly to go spelunking in Winnie's head. So they go up to the loft, and the other 3 men are there, as is Tilly. Winnie is scared and says she doesn't want to do this. We get a description of Tilly. She's dark-haired and ethereal looking with gossamer wings. At some point, we did learn that the twins got their wings, like, torn off, but I forget when.
Yeah, but I can't remember when.
Yeah, I don't remember when either. It's just sort of like a snippet of information.
Yeah. Anyway, she has wings. The twins don't because the twins killed their father. When she arrives, Tilly barely acknowledges her brothers. And this is when Kaz says in his internal monologue that everything they did for her, and now she treats them like serfs or less than dirt.
So sad.
I know. Tilly sits with Winnie and puts her hand on her head and uses her power. As soon as she does so, Winnie is overcome with pain and starts screaming. Kaz is tempted to jump in and save her, but before he can do so, Vane does it for him.
Which is new!
Yep. Vane pulls Winnie up and out of the grip of Tilly, tells everyone in the room that they're done here, and takes Winnie to his room. He's kind of talking to her, like trying to bring her to, tells her that he's sick of watching girls be broken just for the sake of it, that she's safe with him, and he uses his magic to urge her to sleep as he cradles her in his arm. We're all giving each other the same face.
I love when the bad boy gets mushy.
I know. As she sleeps, she has a dream which seems like a vision from the past. Winnie sees who I think is Wendy stores something in the trunk that she inherited from her great-grandmother Wendy. She sees someone who looks like Tilly, who we can infer is Tink. And this person tells Wendy that he can never have it back and he certainly won't have his darling. And then this person kills Wendy on the spot. There's a small child hiding in the closet as well, and this person seems to go unnoticed. That was a dark scene. What did you guys think about that?
It was... There were a few parts in this book that I was like, okay, Nikki.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was really dark.
Yeah, I mean, this is a dark retelling of Peter Pan in all the best ways. Like, it also created a lot more questions for me, necessarily, than it answered. Like, it gave me some answers and gave me more questions, which is my favorite type of information.
Yes, because the information is clearly relevant.
Does that make sense?
And it's not plot holes the size of Atlantis.
Right.
Right. And they're not continuity questions either.
Correct.
Or
No.
this character's acting
Correct.
weird, or I don't understand why they're acting like this, like those kinds of things.
Yeah, no, it all makes sense. And even this like dream sequence, which is clearly like some sort of magic memory thing, also made sense.
Magic memory. Yeah, dream sequences, and you didn't hate it.
I
huh?
didn't hate it because it had a point. It wasn't just like, I'm going to frolic through the snow with this wolf and then I'm going to fuck the wolf.
Back to Chateau, man. Okay.
That one made me so mad. Those dream sequences were the worst.
So when Winnie wakes up, she tries to find Pan, and Vane goes with her to his room. She asks about Tink, and Peter tells her that Tink had loved him, but he loved Wendy, and so Tink killed Wendy, and he killed Tink. So it was a ye old love triangle where two of the people ended up dead.
Whoops.
Oops.
And one ends up sad.
Whoopsie. So after Peter killed Tink, he realized that it made it incredibly difficult to find his shadow because both of the people who knew that where it was were dead.
Yeah. It's not very smart.
So, all right. Earlier in the book, we have this moment where Peter tells us, like, we don't fuck darlings. That's what got us into this mess to begin with, right? That means that Peter has fucked both her great-great-grandmother and also her. And I feel...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I feel weird about it. I try not to think about it too much.
So I don't feel weird about it because I feel like it's so far removed, and it's kind of like when you get into vampire or fae tropes, like they're so old, they fucked so many people. What I did appreciate was that like we don't fuck darlings, because I think it would be way weirder if they had also fucked
All the other darlings.
her mother.
Yeah.
Like we're gonna fuck all of your ancestors, like, but this is what, like 5 generations ago. I'm like, okay, it's weird, but
crucially, they weren't fucking the ones that they were kidnapping.
Right.
And, like, semi-torturing to get information out of.
Yeah.
Right. Because for all we know, and what it seems to be, is that Wendy was there voluntarily.
Right.
Therefore, and they were in love.
Yes.
Right.
And they weren't all fucking them. Like, I think it was probably just Peter.
Fair.
Well,
Maybe not. We'll find out. Maybe.
one can only hope.
One can only hope.
So we learned that the child in the closet in Winnie's vision was Wendy's younger sister. And that's kind of how the lineage like kept going. So I think that actually means that Winnie is Wendy's great aunt, not great grandmother.
Does she name her as her grandmother?
I don't remember.
Because that makes more sense. And that's also less weird to me.
Yeah.
Less
Further removed.
genetics in there, yeah.
Anyway, she goes on to say, and this is another thing that I appreciated. She didn't have the vision and then kind of forget it and then not put 3 and 3 together. Like, she was immediately like, I have to go see Peter. I know where your shadow is. It's in this trunk that I got from my great whatever person. We should go get it. Let's do it.
Yes, I appreciated that so much. Instead of this, like, we're gonna waffle trying to remember memories, or maybe I shouldn't tell Peter. Like, no.
Yeah.
She did all the things she should have done.
So they immediately get to the business of getting to the mortal world, and we find out that they have to jump into the lagoon that they were at earlier from, like, basically go cliff diving. And Winnie's like, is there literally any other way that we could do this? Because she doesn't want to do that at all. She doesn't want to jump off a cliff.
Oh, that sounds scary.
Right. Yeah. But Peter is eventually like, here, I'll be right. I'm right here with you. Take my hand. And so she eventually trusts him, and they jump into the lagoon. It's kind of this cool thing because they jump into the lagoon and then they kind of pop up in a puddle or like a retention pond kind of thing. So it feels very much like those old cartoons that used to put China at the other end of the world. And like you would dig a hole and end up right side up in China. Like that's what I pictured. Jump down and then end up.
Pop up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which was fun. It's a fun visual.
Okay. So they get to the mortal world. They're very close to Winnie's house. And when they get there, they find her mother in a room with the brownie from earlier and several of his other brownie friends. This brownie says that he won't let Peter take the shadow because Tilly wants it and wants to do what's best for the island. He offers the twins that if they want back into the Fae court, this is the way to do it. And the twins, like, there's a very subtle, like, undercurrent here where they're all like, okay, this is the plan, we're going to do it, by just looks. Because the twins are like, tell me more. Yes, we're very interested in this. But they kind of back the brownie into a corner into admitting that Tilly was intentionally sabotaging the darling so that nobody could retrieve the memory of where the shadow was. The brownie confirms this out loud and a fight breaks out. So brownies are fighting lost boys are fighting brownies. Winnie is trying to spend time with her mother. Be like, Mom, are you okay?
Mom, are you good? I'm sorry I doubted you for my whole life.
Right. I'm sorry I thought you were crazy. I mean, you're still a little crazy.
I mean, she's definitely broken, but it's not her fault.
Yeah. But eventually the Lost Boys are successful and they find the trunk. And in the trunk, there is a box. And in that box, we assume there is a shadow, but they don't open it just yet. Before Winnie gives the box to Peter, she tells him that she wants him to take her back to Neverland. He's like, are you sure that's what you want? And she's like, girl, yes, I am 100% sure. That's exactly what I want. But before they leave, they have to do some cleanup. So they bury the brownies in the backyard and Winnie says goodbye to her mother.
There's also this fun one-line fixer of like, oh, the brownies will just like turn back into the earth in like 4 days. Like no one will find these bodies.
Right.
Okay.
So when she asks to go to Neverland with Peter, he's like, you'll be safer here. And she's like, safer is not really what I want. Peter immediately has this flash of bending her over the table and said that he would be lying if he didn't want her wet cunt wrapped around his cock. And I'm like, oh my God.
Yes!
Okay.
Yes!
Yeah, so the dead brownies are buried. They're going to be fine. Her mother's just like kind of out of it, but more at peace, right? So she's not like frantic. She's fine with her daughter going. You know, everything is kind of as it should be.
I liked that Winnie was nervous about leaving her mom behind, given the state of her being, and that her mom has like the mental wherewithal to be like, no, go escape the life that like is here. Go live this life for you kind of thing. I really liked that they had that moment of closure and like connection with each other.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
So Winnie returns to Neverland with the Lost Boys, and at the treehouse, they all gather round and open the box. And when they do, 2 shadows leap out of it, and that's exactly where the book ends. Ooh. Can I tell you how much self-restraint it took me to not immediately get the next book and start reading it?
Girl, same. I had it pulled up on Amazon.
Yeah.
I think that's what I texted you guys. I was like, can we read the next one immediately?
Right, immediately.
God, what a cliffhanger.
So good. And I'm convinced that Wendy's going to get the life shadow and Peter's going to be stuck with the dark shadow. So Wendy's going to be queen.
What's wild
that
to
would
me
be really
is
great.
So the part where they open the box and they find 2 shadows is in the epilogue. So like the book actually doesn't even end. Like it ends somewhere else.
Like there.
And then if you read the epilogue, you find about the 2 shadows. And I think that that's an interesting choice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, especially for people like you who don't read
I read epilogues if I like them.
I'm kidding.
You're
If
not,
I
kind
like them.
You're not a prologue girly, but some girlies I imagine are not epilogue girlies. Let's get into our ratings.
Holy shit. Okay, this book. So good.
All right, so we ended up with a little bit of a disagreement on spice level.
I also changed mine
and I'm interested
on
why.
storytelling as why. I also changed storytelling as well. Words are difficult.
Got it.
I have to pull the script. Okay. Oh, okay.
So I gave it a 5 because one of the things we talk about when we have given ratings in the past is that it's all very boring sex. There's nothing really interesting happening there. There's no really good specific no good emotional connection. And I feel like this book checked all of those boxes. Like, yes, I wanted more of it, but I'm not going to like give the book a negative for not giving. Like, you always want to leave someone wanting more rather than giving them too much and not enjoying that.
Yes.
Yeah, I could see that. And if I'm honest, the only reason I didn't rate it a 5 is because there were
2 scenes.
I wanted more. I wanted more sex. I wanted another gangbang. We're gonna read one coming up, Des. That's like also 200 pages, and it is so much sex.
Chock full.
Right, like there could have at least been another.
Wait, which one are you guys talking about?
Lady of Rooksgrave Manor.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's worth giving the book a negative. I don't know.
It's not negative. It's a 4. It's just not a 5.
I think I'm changing mine to a 5.
Yeah,
it was pretty good. I really liked the,
because here's my thing. If I'm looking for recommendations and someone gives it a 4, I'm gonna pick the 5s over the 4s. But like, there's no reason to not read this book. It's so good. It's damn near
just
perfect.
So fine.
Yeah,
you don't have to change yours. We can do majority rules.
Have to.
Yeah, it's majority rules, and therefore it's a 5.
But
you can retain your integrity and have a 5.
I'm retaining my integrity.
Okay. There we go.
So Katie and I have settled on a 5 for spice level, and Liz is a happy 4 with spice level.
I'm a happy 4. I'm a happy 4. I will return One-Handed Reading Club, but I want the next books to be 5s.
Yes.
Room to grow.
Room to grow.
A grower, not a shower.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to briefly talk about the writing style because it was a 4 across the board. I think the only reason that it wasn't a 5 was just because I don't actually have a good reason why it's not a 5. There were no typos. There was no context inconsistencies. It was easy to read. The sentence structure was simple. Maybe that's why it's not a 5, because the sentence structure was simplistic.
Right. And I think that's really it. Like, this is no Shakespeare. This is no, like, work of, like, amazing art. Like, it is in its own right within its category. But, like, from, like, a imagery, like, I think back to Aisling and, like, the way that the book of Aisling was describing, like, the world around her. I think that is, like, a level 5. Like, oh my gosh, that's a beautiful, like, imagery that you're providing. And this book it had some of that, but not a whole lot. Like, to our point, like, we get a couple of different locations, but we don't get a whole lot of detail about them. And so, like, from a 4, it's a 4 from that perspective.
I like that too, and I think of, like, Nettle and Bone also in, like, the top 5 writing style category.
It's emotive.
Yeah, it was just so beautiful.
Yeah,
that's a good point. So it is a 4. Well written, easy to read, like, no typos. Didn't bring you out of the fantasy, like, very well done. Just not, like, that top tier kind of thing. All right, so we also have a bit of a disagreement on quality of storytelling. So Liz, why did you rate it a 4?
As we've talked about this, like, I'm not sure. I think, like, I did like that it was simple and it, like, gives you what it is, but I do wish it was, I almost wish it was a little longer. Like, I wish I got some more information. Like, I don't want an info dump, but I want more information. And I think that information will come in subsequent books, but, like, we know that Vane comes from a different island and that there's 7 islands and 7 kings. And, like, I want to know all of that stuff, but I also know that if she had put that in there as an info dump, I would have been upset. So I don't know, maybe
can't be pleased.
Can't win here. I know I feel real shitty about it, but it just, like, I wanted a little bit more.
Yeah.
I had it as a 4 as well, and I changed it as we were talking to a 5 because there were so many moments where we talked about, like, the perspective shifts that could have been really clunky and awful, and it was done really well. We got similar levels of information for all of the people, but not all of the information. We have all these, like, mysteries and questions, but none of them feel random or inconsequential. They all feel important and relevant, and some were answered and some were not, and we were given new ones, and, like, the story progressed in a way that felt natural and good. Like, good feels like not a great word to use here, but, like, it all aligned itself really well. And so I gave it a 5 from that perspective of, like, again, going back to, like, this is such a short book, and for it to have told the story it did and give us the smut that it did really sits well at a 5 for me.
I think that's why I'm changing mine to a 5.
You
I also
sold
had it
me.
as a 4.
Yeah. You did sell me on that.
And I mean, like, you're right. And we talked about this even before we started getting into the recap. Like, this author packed so fucking much in less than 200 pages. It is impressive.
And I don't feel exhausted.
The amount of story. Right. Exactly. I feel hungry.
I need more. I need more.
All right. So, yes, we recommend this book. We are just chomping at the bit to read the second one.
I cannot, like, I'm almost more excited for this second one than I was for, like,
any of the other ones.
Even, like, Ashes and the Starker's King. Like, I'm more excited for this one.
Yeah.
I get it. Same.
Absolutely. So those are our thoughts on The Never King by Nikki St. Crowe. Thank you, as always, for joining us on this journey. What did you think? Let us know on the socials. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Goodreads, and Patreon at Spice Traders Pod. And if you like our podcast, be sure to drop us a review wherever you listen to us. Until next time, bye.
Bye.
Bye.